with Engineer Pascal Okeke. He's the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Restaurants Booming Firm, to tell us how all that's happening in the country is affecting that firm. Let's continue this conversation on other platforms and channels, television, discussing restaurant business and what has been happening. Economic headwinds we've seen, are we recovering? Is that sector or that industry also recovering? I was speaking to Engineer Pascal Okeke. Engineer Okeke, good morning. An engineer talking about food business.
Good morning. Good morning.
So tell us how much impact the headwinds we've seen in the country has affected restaurant business in the country.
Okay. First of all, I would want to, give credit first of all to the sector, because the food business sector in Nigeria has, remained one of the sectors that, irrespective of the economic headwinds, has continued to thrive. And it's so because it's food, and not just basically because it is food. It is also because it's a place of relaxation for a lot of individuals after the hustles of the day and all of that. And so I would also want to give credit to the operators, the players of the sector, because they've also remained resilient in the industry, irrespective of the challenges that they are facing. But as for challenges, I must tell you, there are lots of challenges that these men and women are facing in the sector, and then they are trying to do their best to pull through from them. And for me, I would say that the biggest challenge the organized food business sector is facing in Nigeria is challenge on costs of operation, but most particularly on the cost of food. Because you can agree with me too on the current rise in ingredients materials. And so if you're running a restaurant where you have a list of or endless list of menu items, and the price hike they are currently suffering is as high as it is, it's always very difficult to stay in business. So the current increase in raw materials for this sector has gone ahead to minimize the contribution margin. So you can imagine a typical restaurant operating or running at up to 40% to 45% food cost alone. You know the implication of that. I know there is no ideal industry standard, but then we at the restaurant booming firm, we always encourage that restaurators should run at least between 30 and 35, and that is still dependent on the kind of restaurant that you operate. But then anytime the percentage on food alone increases beyond 35, 40, some are doing way more. We've had overhaul on a restaurant that was doing up to 62% just on food. And then when you take into account the overhead, which is also on the rise, and then take into account the labor also, before you talk about the efforts they are putting in to, promote their businesses, you understand that the cost is over laboring for a lot of brands. Yeah, the business is a game of number, and a lot of bigger restaurants might not experience these problems as it is because of the number. And but then for the smaller restaurateurs, which of course we have them more in numbers scattered all over Nigeria. So this is a capital problem, and it's a problem that I wouldn't know, but maybe along the line I may also be able to give some recommendations that we persist or insist that they try to form such recommendations or take into account such recommendations to be able to manage the cost at bed.
Perhaps you should go ahead, just go ahead and share those suggestions.
Okay, so for example, we recommend proper internal structuring is one of the key areas of curtailing this cost. Because I would always insist that there is no point, trying to improve the foot traffic into the business when the internal structures or systems are not in place. Because when you have the internal structures and systems in place, it helps you to tame the cost to a reasonable level. And there are some costs, that are fixed, like the labor. If you have a number of persons on your team, for example, the cost is a little bit fixed to compare to food and to compare to overheads. So when the structure internally is well put in place, it helps you to keep the cost at 10. So that anytime you now put in some efforts to increase the foot traffic, you'll be able to see the effects in the business, and you can tap into leveraging on the game of number that this business is thriving on. Again, I also see the fact that there are no local communities for respirators across the country as a very big challenge. I know there are such organizations on a national level, but what about the state level? What about the local community level? Can we have these respirators, clustered together? And of course, there is a stronger power and unity in efforts that are pulled in together, especially in sourcing some of their local raw materials. So if we have such clusters in local communities, at local government levels, at state levels, and then you're talking about the national level, it will definitely assist, especially the small players in the industry or in the sector rather, to be able to access some of their raw materials at a better price rate, to be able to manage their costs and also see something, no matter how small it is, in their contribution margin.
So do you
And
think
again, of
that
course,
would...
we are also making efforts in that regard as a restaurant booming firm, trying to, cluster such community. We've been able to build over 3,000 of that, and we are supporting the communities, as much as we can. But then more needs to be done across the country.
So do you think that perhaps that would also eliminate the third party thing? So the restaurant, for instance, can have a direct interaction or transaction with the farmers, and that might reduce the cost of the food crops.
Of course, my company recently did an analysis on the impact of purchasing directly from vendors and purchasing directly from the farmers. And we did this analysis with an item, an ingredient that is as little as the egg supply. And so when we did the analysis, you notice that they lose a lot of money from buying from vendors. I'm not trying to, distort anybody's business, but it's always better off that ingredients are sourced directly from the source. And this is one thing that these local communities that I'm suggesting and trying to champion with the restaurant booming fair.
All right, Engineer Pascal.
It will help to cut down on cost.
All right, Engineer Pascal, thank you for that. Obviously, removing the middleman or middlemen would help. I guess we'll have to continue this conversation on another day. Engineer Pascal Okeke is founder and Chief Executive Officer of Restaurants Booming Firm. Thank you for sharing those tips with us this morning.
Thank you again. Thank you very much.
So I'll get off your way now, hand you back to the Sunrise Daily Studio. But Ladi Williams will be here at 1 p.m. as well as Aniti Edet. They'll be taking you around the world of business in 55 minutes. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.